with so many people unable to attend Mass this weekend in the pews, I thought that I would record my homily. In our Gospel, Jesus proclaims the truth. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And then after stating this, Jesus goes on to do what many think is impossible. Jesus heals a man born blind. And so, in seeing this and seeing Jesus heal this man born blind, we call to mind that everything is possible with God, and that we can still have confidence that Jesus is in the world, lighting our way even now. Now, we're in a time where Jesus might feel further away. Our human tendency is to cry out saying, "Jesus, where are you? And what are you doing about this?" And I think that there is something right in asking these questions. We want to look to our Lord, want to look to our Good Shepherd, and see, where is he and what is he doing? When we do this, it helps us to grow. We want to look and find where the light of Jesus is shining. Where is it shining now in this moment? And in some cases, it might be that the light that Jesus is shining is in a place that we don't want to go. Another way of looking at it is to go where the grace is. We know that God offers to us grace, and that his grace is a gift for us to help us to grow. And we can have confidence that even now, in the darkness of these coronavirus times, we know that God still offers his grace to us. So let us follow where the grace of God is leading us. Let God take us by the hand and lead us to a new place, and it might be a place that we don't deem to be right. For the moment, it seems that God is leading us to our homes, so we're able to sanctify our life at home. This is where the light of God is shining in these times. We see it in that our government is asking us to stay home. And so far, our government has asked us to do this in a manner that seems right and just. It seems prudent, given all that we know about this virus, the way that it spreads, we always seem to be 4 or 5 days behind it. And, who would have thought that closing the churches would be the way to handle this crisis? But this is what the church is asking of us in this moment. We see it from the encouragement from our Holy Father, the Pope, and through many bishops, through our diocesan administrator, through Father Gabriel. All of them are asking us to play our role now, here in this moment, so that we answer the call of this moment. So in this moment, God is speaking to us. He's guiding us through our government, through the church, and we find ourselves at home. Interestingly, I've been hearing many people use the imagery of Jesus asleep on the boat as an image to speak peace and reassurance into our lives. Recall how Jesus was there asleep while the storm was against the boat, that there were waves crashing against the boat, coming in, flooding the boat. The disciples, for just and right reasons, were afraid. But yet, Jesus was there asleep. So if Jesus is not panicked, then neither should we be. To use the use of this image of Jesus asleep in the boat, it strikes me. It surprises me, and the reason that it strikes and surprises me, because back in November, I took my retreat, because Father Gabriel was going on sabbatical. So I went to a place that was nearby, didn't want to travel too far. So one of the closer places to go on retreat is Pachymon Terrace in St. Francis, Minnesota, which is down by Cambridge and Isani. And there, at this retreat center, the person on retreat lives in a hermitage, a one-room house. So I lived in this one-room house for a week, and I was there praying to God, asking him for his guidance during these times, during the times that Father Gabriel would be gone on sabbatical. Now, as I was there praying, two main images kept coming to my mind over and over and over again. The first image was Jesus asleep on the boat, and the second was the life of Jesus that he lived at home with Mary and Joseph in Nazareth. So for much of those days on retreat, I had the sense that Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were there with me in the hermitage, but that they were asleep, that they were present, and the fact that they were asleep, it actually gave me this deep sense of peace while I was on retreat. More strikingly was that at night, there was a doe and a fawn who would just bed down just a short distance away from my hermitage. And as it was November, it was fall, so all of creation, everything around this hermitage seemed to be going dormant. You could see the leaves falling, and just as I looked out of the window, this big glass window, I just had this sense that the whole world was at peace and that it was at rest. At the time, I took this to mean that Jesus was saying to me, I've got this. If Jesus is not worried about Father Gabriel being on sabbatical, then I don't need to be either. My conclusion for the parish was that while the pastor's on sabbatical, so too the parish can find rest and healing in God. And now, strangely enough, this is where we find ourselves at home more, still perhaps searching for rest and healing in God. Many are kind of feeling that unrest due to anxieties and frustrations, and these anxieties and frustrations are real. Perhaps we will be able to find this sense of peace over time. Looking back, this peaceful image from my retreat, it boggles my mind. Was this an image for these times that we are facing now with the coronavirus? It may not be easy to have that sense of peace because we're adjusting to new routines, new circumstances, different things that cause that restlessness within us. But the key for us now in this time is to go where the grace of God is, to let God lead you by the hand, that you can grow during this time of difficulty. To grow spiritually, the first stage is to allow ourselves to grieve, to let God know just how frustrating these things are, how worried you are. Just allow yourself to weep and cry, to feel all those different emotions that we are, so that to let all of these things out. Because sometimes this is where the grace of God is, where we're able to offer these frustrations to God. So when we think about it, where else can we take these frustrations? Left on our own, they just remain, they keep us in darkness. And as we remain in the darkness, all that can do is lead to despair. So what we want to do is share our frustrations, the grief, with God, so that as we share our frustrations and grief with God, it slowly opens up our souls, our hearts, to let the light of Christ inside of us, so that as we give those things to Him, God shares in our life. And the more that He shares in our life, the more that He lives in our hearts. I want to also share with you another important detail of my retreat experience. And that is that at every morning, about 6 o'clock, I would wake up to this rustling noise. The rustling of leaves, the clanking of acorns. I would try to figure out, what is it? What's causing this? Is it inside my hermitage or is this outside? And eventually, I was able to figure it out. It was a flying squirrel that was all set for the winter. This little, annoying, hoarding creature that had made its home in my hermitage. It would disturb my peace. It was actually the only thing, the one thing that would disturb my peace. Over time, I was able to get over the annoyance, and I did it by making it a prayer. I would turn my attention to God and say, "There's always a flying squirrel in the attic," meaning that there will be annoyances as we go through life. When I got back here to the parish, every once in a while there were things that would annoy me. So I would turn to God and say, "There's always a flying squirrel in the attic." It was this inside phrase that I shared with God. Only He and I knew what it meant because of that retreat experience that I had shared with God. So now you may really be feeling many of these annoyances. And when we encounter these annoyances, we can say, will I become bitter or will I become better? For me, I chose to become better, to turn to God and say, there's always a flying squirrel in the attic. These annoyances can be the place where God's grace is leading us. It's where God's grace is, where He's leading us to grow, because the annoyances are real and they're right in front of us. And in a sense, that's where we want God to be. We want God to be a real part of our life and to be right in front of us, right with us, helping us to endure those trials, those difficulties that we face. So this retreat experience remained in me all December and into January. And on January 7th, I made this to just kind of help me continue to pray and reflect on my retreat, what all these kind of images might continue to mean. Put one on my closet door and another in my breviary so that I could continue to reflect on it, to continue to allow myself to feel that interior peace, that calm, just to know that God is abiding within me, that He lives in me, and that I can have that humble confidence that He's with me. So just to help continue to inspire me, I also included images of Jesus asleep in the boat, the deer kind of bedded down there, just to remind myself of that peace of having all of creation, all of the world at rest. And there we see Mary and Jesus asleep with Joseph, and then a scene from the house in Nazareth where Joseph, Mary, and Jesus all worked. And then also included a picture of Blessed Sacrament, because now that the retreat was done, I'm planted here in Hibbing, and being here in Hibbing, that's where I'm to grow. That's where God's grace is leading me. So my encouragement for you now is to enter in and let God really dwell with you in your home, to let the light of Christ open up inside your heart. My hope and my prayer for all of you through these strange and difficult times is that you're able to follow God's grace, to let Him lead you, that your soul might become like a desert that blossoms when it's watered, that no matter what your previous experience of prayer has been, that now as you enter into the hermitage of your home, that you're able to experience a tremendous new growth in your soul, tremendous new growth in your prayer life, that your soul may blossom like the watered desert. So be at peace in your home. Imagine the years that Jesus spent at His home in Nazareth with Mary and Joseph, and remember that Jesus is in the world, that Jesus is the light of the world. He has a plan. He's attending to things that we cannot see at the moment. And don't forget that there's always a flying squirrel in the attic.